What's up, nitwits? It's Damo99, and with me as always, Game Over Joey.
Hey Nitwits, how's it going?
And we are here for a early access video game review for Video Horror Society, or VHS, which is a thrilling 4v1 asymmetric action tribute to the 80s horror era where small-town teens face off against terrifying monsters brought to life from the aisles of their local video store.
First and foremost, I want to say this. I know I was supposed to gravitate into graphics right away, but well, I just want to say to anyone that is watching, we've had to re-record the actual introduction of this 4 or 5 times due to interruptions. I had to throw it out there. It's hysterical, and I really think we need to add a blooper section.
We will.
No, let's talk about the graphics. So, Dom, what are your thoughts on the graphics?
I mean, to me, I think they're beautiful. I love a cartoon style game more than like a serious game, especially that I think with what this game goes for, it buys in perfectly. It really does feel like this game is taken right out of the 80s, like you're watching a movie. I mean, it really hits the nail right on the head. It's beautifully done, and I have to give it all the credit in the world. It is one of the prettier games that we've played. And plus, for free to play and in early access, you can't beat how great this game is already in the graphic department.
100%. I agree with your analysis, man. I think that... Actually, I take that back. I don't think. The graphics are phenomenal. For what you're getting for a free-to-play game, and I know people are going to argue, well, Fortnite's free-to-play, and Fortnite's... It is, you're right. But overall, the retro theme that they went with here for the 80s, especially if you're someone that's in love with the 80s, or you just enjoy the bright colors, the old school movies, it is a beautiful adaptation of the 80s. They hit the nail right on the head, as you said, Dom, and I don't think they could have done anything better with the graphics. It's a beautiful game. It is. Every time we launch it up and we play, I think to myself, like, damn, this is beautiful. and it truly is. The devs did an excellent job in this category, and if I had to rate them in the specific category, I'd give them a 5 out of 5. Just specifically on graphics, they did a hell of a job.
I would tie this in too with the graphics. I agree with your 5 out of 5 for graphics. I think as strong as the graphics are for this game, the audio is just as strong. I mean, the audio is so well done. Whether it just be the noises of the game, knocking over a chair, the little just little different noises and everything. It's so well done for such an early access game. And I like that you brought up Fortnite as well. Fortnite's a free-to-play early access game. Fortnite had its troubles and was ugly from the beginning. But now Fortnite is this amazing, beautiful game because it's had years to develop.
Yeah,
plus,
absolutely.
An astronomical amount of money. But that's another story. But for Video Horror Society being early access, to have the graphics it does, the way the audio plays into the game, whether it just be footsteps, knocking things over, the noises you make when you're creating items or crafting items, it's so well done. And I can't stress enough how amazing this is for early access.
Yeah, and that's the key term, early access, right? So this game is not by any means out, right? It's out in early access, still has a long way to go to iron out a lot of kinks that it has. And believe me, there are kinks, right? But
oh yeah,
Hellbent, has developed a great game. And the audio, just to reiterate, when you're walking around on metal, you can hear every ding, ding, ding when you're walking, when you're getting in and out of a locker, when you're knocking something over. Sound is crucial, especially if you're playing as the monster. Because if you're listening through a good pair of headphones, you can make out if it's coming from your left, if it's coming from your right, is it coming from behind you? And that is key, right? And as a team, you really want to make sure that you are not bumping into things, that you're not being loud, that you're not running all the time. You're wanting to be a little bit more stealthy. And I do think that the audio aspect, again, they hit the nail right on the head. The music too. It is truly 80s. And I can see them incorporate 80s songs into this. I mean, I don't know if they're going to license any, but in all reality, any song you can think of from the 80s could incorporate into this game.
Easily.
Yeah, hands down. Everything that they did. A 5 out of 5. Again, audio is near perfection, if not perfected.
Right. I 100% would agree with it. And everything about this game so far, that graphically, audioly, everything, it's only going to keep improving, which is awesome to see.
Yeah.
And then that's like a big promise for this game so far.
Yeah, and I agree 100% with that. Again, audio, graphics are really what's going to tie a lot of people in. But let's be real. Everyone wants to know how the gameplay is. That is what makes a game. You can take a game with terrible graphics and terrible audio, but if it has hella great gameplay, you're going to play it, okay? And let's talk about the gameplay. Don, what are your thoughts there? And let's just focus on the positives first.
Okay. Definitely with the gameplay, you move pretty well. You know, I think there's some things they can add in or, you know, adjust. I feel, though, for the stage that it's in and everything going on with the game, it's pretty solid. The monsters are a little, in my opinion, overpowered compared to the kids, but that's okay. Like, it's going to be it's going to be a lot of, like, tweaks and balance system that we're going to run through. Overall, I mean, the positive I would say is each kid with their own unique ability and everything really stand out. Each monster stands out. The wolf definitely is completely different than the puppet master. Like, each character, you can definitely feel what they were going for with them and play to that style. And I think that's a really cool thing to already see in a game like this.
Yeah, I think the gameplay is very unique. And it's a game that really does promote communication and team play. Because
that's the key to everything.
Because if you're not communicating by voice or if you're pinging, but you're pinging where the monster is, what you're working on, it can truly make a disadvantage for the teens. The gameplay is very unique too. A lot of people are comparing this to Dead by Daylight, and I think that's a horrible comparison because they play so differently. So number one, as a teen, your goal is to develop a weapon to actually vanquish the monster. Okay, so that is completely different to Dead by Daylight. In Dead by Daylight, the monster cannot be defeated. You're running and hiding, repairing generators, escaping through the gate, and then you're collecting your blood points at the end of the round, right? And by no means, Dead by Daylight is one of my favorite games for anyone that doesn't know that. So I absolutely adore Dead by Daylight, but this is its own identity, and this game does a lot of things extremely well that I wish Dead by Daylight can incorporate. So number one, the gameplay is completely different. Your goal is to vanquish and completely get rid of that monster, right? You have three monsters. You have the Doll Master, the Wolf, and then Wart, I'm sorry. And they're very unique, but those are the only monsters you have currently, and I believe you have 5 or 6 teams. And each team does have their own separate abilities, and they can all basically cater to the team in different ways. So one, for example, is really good at healing and healing quicker. So really cool variations there. I also love the fact there are a ton of cosmetic options. Tons. And there's a lot to grind for. And there's really a lot that you are working towards, not just cosmetics, but again, leveling up your character, unlocking the abilities. There's a lot of content here for being an early access game. And I feel like it couldn't come out at a better time. Again, I know we haven't talked about this specifically, but the devs didn't announce an actual date for early access. They just dropped it one day, which was, last week?
Yeah, out of nowhere. It was just like, oh, it's out.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that it's fantastic, right? And, the gameplay is extremely solid, but there are some cons here. But before we get over to the cons, I do want to just add very quickly that the devs are actively communicating with the players on this game. So they're actually taking our feedback and implementing it into the game to make the game better. And I think that in itself is a huge win for us as the players, because a lot of devs don't listen, and with Hellbent being a smaller studio, they're not super small, but they're smaller. And they're taking in our feedback and incorporating into the game the best they can. For example, like they've nerfed some of the monsters already. that just goes to show that they want to ensure this is a long-lasting game and a game that lasts a very long time.
I will give the devs so much credit. We'll talk about problems that went into the game, but they were upfront from the beginning. They didn't try to hide behind anything. They were right out in the open with it. Hey, we're working on it. We're going to get fixed. And they let you know all of the updates as we went on. And I do think that's a huge thing. I mean, that's just as good as Phasmophobia, which I think Phasmophobia has some of the best devs working on the game. For smaller studios, at least, you know.
I 100% agree. And I think that, you know, one thing that Phasmophobia, I know this isn't a Phasmophobia review, but they have promoted a very player-centric environment, and a lot of games can't say they've done that. And I think about a lot of AAA games, and you know, this is gonna sound horrible, but these AAA games like you know, that Battlefield and so EA and so forth, and Ubisoft games, they're not really listening to the players as much as they should be.
Yeah.
And I think these indie developers want to cater to the player base to ensure a positive experience, to ensure that their game keeps growing, and long term that's going to have benefits not only for them but the community, us. So yeah, I do think that Hellbent is doing a phenomenal job in regards to being open with the community, and they're not hiding anything for the most part. If there are problems, you can jump right into their Discord, say it, and you'll get a response from a community manager relatively quick.
Yeah.
So I think that's awesome. Now let's jump into the cons. And this is one I know we're both eager to talk about. Not because the game is bad by any means. You know, Dom and I agree that this is a great game and definitely worth downloading. But there are some cons here that can really deter somebody from not wanting to play the game after playing the game maybe just for a few hours. The first one being our wait times. Just long queue times in general. Dom, I'll let you take it over.
Well, when the game first launched, we were probably waiting about 10 minutes. I would say 10 to 12 minutes per match, which is just insane. And then if you pick the monster, you probably cut that down to about 5 to 6 minutes. But for a new game that came out, like, you want to play, you want to grind it. Like, this is the time now to take over. And I think this was the most frustrating part. And sometimes even if you got into a game after a 10, 12 minute wait, if you did not have people that communicated, you lost so quick that it was you spent 3 minutes in a game and wasted 10 minutes waiting. We had games where we waited over 16 minutes to get into a lobby. And I think, you know, there's general little problems like that, and they've worked on it. It's cut down now to about half the time, so you're waiting about 5 to 6 minutes now instead of the 10 to 12. But still, it's such a long time. It still feels like it. But they're working on it. They're real upfront about it, which is great to hear. But the wait time is killer.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think a lot of that is not just because the servers weren't ready, because obviously that does play a huge role, but them not communicating the launch.
Yeah.
If there was a date and time listed on this, more players would have been aware of the game, and we would have probably had more downloads. Let's just be real. I think that would help out drastically. But the queue times have been horrible. And as you stated, Dom, when you get into a game, there's 5 of you there. Some of the players are newer to the game and or haven't taken the time to learn how to play the game. So the games only last a few minutes, and then you go back into a queue time of 15, 16, 17 minutes. And then you're sitting there extremely frustrated that you've spent the last hour and you've played 2 games. And 10 minutes of that whole hour, right? It's terrible in that sense. So somebody that has 10 hours into the game, you're probably looking at 7 hours to just, you know, queue time. And that's horrible. Now, it's not as bad as it was when it first came out, but it's still rough. And it's something that I think will be fixed over time, not just by servers, but player count. But that is hands down the biggest con this game has. But if you do plan on playing Monster most of the time, that's not going to be your biggest con whatsoever.
Oh, not at all.
Your biggest con as playing as Monster is playing up against 4 teens that know what they're doing, and they utilize the weapon so well and effectively that you will not be able to do anything. So that's probably going to be your biggest pain point, and that leads us to our next con is balancing. So I'll start this one off, and my biggest frustration is I think the game is okay balanced. And what I mean by that is there are major rooms for improvement, yes, but I do feel that they have done a pretty good job for it being such a new game with where they currently are. One of my biggest frustrations, though, is playing as a team and you being disrupted when you're upstairs and the monster's clearly in the basement. How the hell does that happen? So, for anyone that hasn't played the game, the monster has like a rage meter, if you will. And when the monster rages and screams, it causes you to become paralyzed. You can't do anything except run.
You move like real slow state, and a real slow state is how I describe it.
Yeah, you can't use your weapon if you have a weapon. You can't vault. So they've kind of paralyzed you in many aspects for a good 5-6 seconds. And the range on that specific ability for the monsters is extremely frustrating. And it has been nerfed, but it's still very strong. That's my first complaint. My second complaint is Ward. Ward. He is extremely frustrating to play against.
Yep.
Because he has a shield ability where he is not really impacted by your weapons if he pops a shield. You can stun him, but you cannot vanquish him. So you don't want to waste your ammunition because it is limited. So the goal is when he pops a shield, you want to run and save and conserve your ammo. But I've noticed when he goes out of his shield mode, then he does his little rage, then you get disrupted, and then you become paralyzed, and then you can't do anything again. Okay, that is so frustrating, and they need to find a happy medium with that specific those abilities. And last but not least, my other frustration is when you spawn into a game, we don't know who the monster is, right? The monster looks like a teen. Then basically after 30 seconds or so, they can choose to spawn into the monster right away, or they can play tricks and act like they're gonna run with you and then transform. That's a really cool element. But what I hate about one of the monster's abilities, though, is when you do vanquish the monster, the way they spawn. They can spawn right behind you as you're working on a weapon with no notice, and then you're down. The spawn points are trash. It just brings me back playing Call of Duty.
Well, they can move wherever they want to, and I think the problem with that is if the monster spawns behind you, you need some sort of either shield or a better warning system. I think that would be a huge help, but you can literally get vanquished as a monster and then just appear behind the teens while they're doing something and just, boom, you got them.
Yeah.
Like with no problem.
Yeah, it is so frustrating. Now, Dom, what are your cons specifically for the monster aspect?
I feel for monster sometimes it's just if you play 4 good teams at communicating, you're done. You don't stand a chance. Yeah. And there's certain maps that definitely favor certain monsters, etc., etc. But the wolf is so strong, I feel. And then the doll master, or the puppeteer is what I call him. He's horrible. Honestly, I think he's awful. And you've been good with him. And I've never played a good one or seen really a good one. Like, maybe they knock 1 or 2 teams down, but overall, like, that wolf, unless you two are, like, the 4 is communicating, you're doomed. That's how I always feel with him. And then the same thing with the wart. I feel like he's tough, but he just takes, like, you have to wait for your opportunity. You have to take the right shot. But the wolf, he'll howl all the time. It's too quick of a or cooldown for the howl, and you're just useless.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But again, they all disrupt, right? I mean, Ward has it. Then you also have the doll master has it, and I think that. So we agree that that's our biggest complaint.
Oh yeah, and
something that they truly need to work on and focus on the balancing piece. Now, and I agree with your complaint. For survivors, right? As a survivor, if I mean, as a monster, if you have 4 very competent survivors, sometimes you don't have a chance.
No, not at all.
And it is so frustrating because you become immobile, right? You kind of get stuck in the same spot and can't really counter. So I see why disrupt is a key thing to have in the game, right? Not disagreeing with it shouldn't be there, but ultimately it can paralyze the survivors to the point where it's extremely frustrating, and or vice versa. The survivors can paralyze the killer or the monster by utilizing all their weapons. So, but overall, I mean, you know, the gameplay aspect, I think it's a really, really great game, right? It is solid. The only other issue I have with the game is they need more jungle gems. They need more things to run around. They need to be able to drop. You know, the other day you mentioned that it'd be cool if you could drop a locker, and I made the comment of just like Dead by Daylight, right? You could drop a pallet. Why isn't there more objects to run around? And I guess you can say, well, the reason being is because this is its own identity, and they're not a game where you're trying to run the monster, you're trying to vanquish the monster. But runtime is extremely difficult in this game because a lot of the monsters can lunge at you from a good distance. They can disrupt you. There's so much that they can do. So if you had more windows to jump through or more jungle gems in general to lose the monster, I do think that would bring an overall better experience to the team players.
No, I definitely would agree with that, and I think I think the locker's an easy thing to do. You can already hide in them, but there's no reason not to think you can't have some old lockers that are knocked over, or depending on the map, maybe a different thing for each map. But in general, even if there's like things you could drop through, things I just feel the game is, the maps are very basic, and I think the maps will get the biggest updates as we go along here. But for where it's at, where it is, I know we keep preaching that. It's pretty great, but man, you can't run from monsters unless you have a weapon. And sometimes you don't have enough time to get a weapon to be able to run from the monster.
Yeah, I mean, you can run from monsters, but there's only a few key areas, right?
Yeah.
Like, where the windows are placed, you can run and lap that for a while to the point where you could really piss off a monster. Now, there's not enough of those locations, though, and again, I see why there may not be, but I do think it's something they should add for just overall better balancing. Yeah, overall, though, I mean, what are your overall thoughts now on the game itself? Like, if you had to sit here and give it an overall rating, right, and why the rating is this, what would you say?
You know, if they really do get the queue times controlled, I would be willing to say this is a 4.5. But right now, I'll say the game's a 4. For early access, this is one of the better early access games we've had the pleasure of playing. I love it. It's a great theme. The game plays amazingly. You know, there's some balancing issues a little bit here and there, but as long as you're communicating, it's a fun game, and especially if you have friends to play with, this game is amazing. I really have to hand it to them. I feel this game will keep going far, it will keep growing, and Video Horror Society is something to look out for, in my opinion, in the future. But definitely would go 4. They fixed the queue times. I'm definitely willing to go 4.5.
Yeah, okay, I agree. I agree the game is a 4 out of 5, right off the bat. And there are some things that are extremely frustrating, yes. But again, once those things are corrected, I agree this could be 4.5, even a 5 out of 5. I really love the 80s genre here. If you love the 80s and you love the old references to pop culture and movies that you love from the 80s, I really think this is going to sell itself to you based off of just the graphics, the music, and just the genre itself, right?
Yeah.
The gameplay is the cherry on top. And I really think that the gameplay is a huge... Okay, let me take that back. The star of the show is definitely the setting, right? The gameplay is getting there, and once it gets there, that's going to be a huge element to why people are going to love this game. I honestly think everything about the game is lovable, and I have truly enjoyed every match I've been in. I've had my heart racing, my adrenaline up, me getting super excited when I actually vanquish a monster with a weapon, versus me playing the monster and me like, "Oh, come back here, you stinking little kids," you know, like you know, catching
Yeah.
them, and so it's really cool. And here's the thing, I think we can both agree, say we both recommend this game 100%, right? The game
Yeah.
is free. You have absolutely nothing to lose. And so try it out, you know, develop your own thoughts and let us know what you think in the comment section below. And I think, again, if you love a game that focuses heavily on teamwork and strategy, which Dead by Daylight is very similar to, you're going to love this. And this has its own identity with some major differences between Dead by Daylight and any other 4v1 asymmetrical game. So I recommend, Dom recommends, you pick this game up, play it. You'll see us. The population is not that big right now. I'm sure we'll be in some lobby at some point.
Yeah.
And we can link up and play together. But if you have friends, this is definitely worth buying. Downloading and trying out. And I don't think you'll be disappointed.
Not at all. I mean, this game's really worth every bit of free. You know, it's hard to complain with that. And it is a fun game, even if you don't have friends. Just communicating. The community is actually pretty non-toxic right now, which is another great thing. And a lot of people
join a lobby
just
with us.
Yeah, well, that's just because of Modern Warfare. It's early Call of Duty days, but no, honestly, I think the community is extremely, you know, understanding for the most part. There are times where you get frustrated, but almost everyone I've ever played with, they're pretty understanding and they help you grow and learn. And if nothing else, if you lose, like, there's good opportunities just to learn from other people as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. So we both agree, a 4 out of 5. Phenomenal game, fantastic, worth picking up, trying out. Again, worth downloading. You can't beat it. As you just said, it's free. I mean, it is a free game. You had nothing to lose except you download it, you hate it, and that's it. Which I highly doubt that. If you are someone that likes this genre of games, and there are a lot of these, you will enjoy this one. Help the game become better, join their Discord community, provide your feedback, and become a member of the community. Not just join it and watch what other people are saying, provide your own too. Help the game become better. Help it be the game you want it to be.
Back. But alright, nitwits. It's been fun. That's Video Horror Society all wrapped up, or VHS. An early access game, which I'm telling you, I think is going to grow. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it will compete with other 4v1 asymmetric games, which is a awesome, different, what most people I think are used to, category gaming. So stay with us around for the next video game review. As always, I'm Damo99. Have a great day.
And I'm Game Over Joey. Peace, love, and chicken grease.